Could I have it, please? Okay, are we ready, technically speaking? Good, excellent. Our next speaker is Maureen McGarvey, who is a long-standing member of the International House London team, with special interests in academic management and management training and online learning. I won't ask how long you've been a member of the International House team, partly because that would be ungallant, but I don't actually know. One of the things that happened to me when I was a trustee, first became a trustee, I was taken on various inductions, met various people in various departments, all of whom were absolutely charming, and at the end of each meeting, I still knew as little as I knew before. When I met Maureen, she said, "Come on, let's go out for lunch, and I'll give you all the gossip." And it was all, at that point, I felt, yeah, I can warm to this person, so I couldn't have found a better soulmate. Maureen is going to talk about The Circle is Unbroken. Thank you very much, Maureen.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Simon, for such a lovely introduction, and I'm very pleased that the bribe I tucked under your napkin has ensured that you kept everything under your hat. I'm very privileged to be included in the lineup of speakers today, and when we meet the speakers at conferences or at events such as this, you often hear people saying, "Oh, I loved your latest book," or "Oh, that talk you gave at this conference was fantastic." The most common thing people say to me is, "Are you still here?" And I am still here, and I hope as I go through the talk I'll be able to give you some explanation or some insight into why I am still here. And I've chosen for the title of my talk a phrase, "The Circle is Unbroken," and this comes from a song by the Incredible String Band. Now, you must be very grateful that I didn't do this as an embedded sound clip, because it was in my youth playing this band music at top volume in my bedroom that would lead my Scottish father to shout up the stairs, "Turn that bloody noise down!" So you should be very grateful that I'm just going to use the lyrics. And the lyric that starts off from this is, "Scattered we were when the long night was breaking, but in the bright morning converse again." And those of you who spent any time in the IH bar will be very familiar with that scattered feeling. And I want to look at how we got to where we are, which is, I suppose, a theme that's going through everybody's talks today as we're celebrating 60 years of our organisation. I originally trained as a primary school teacher, and on my second teaching practice, my reception class came running in and said, "We've had a great idea, we'd like to blow up the school." And I thought this was a brilliant idea as well. And so I said, "Well, okay, let's sit down and talk about what would we do, how would we do it, where would we plant the bombs for maximum effect?" And my idea was that we'd build a scale model of the school and work out who was going to be where and what. You can perhaps understand that the headmaster was not too keen on this as a way forward, and was seemingly unaware of what an early adopter of not only task-based learning but dogma as an approach I was in those early days. So I left there rather quickly, and I came to work in Shaftesbury Avenue as a receptionist. Now, what happened when I got there? Well, I can only give you the quote of, "It's a school gym, but not as I knew it." And I suddenly really understood a quote that my father always used to make, which is, my father said it, and it goes as far back as Confucius, and my daughter will be able to tell you that I'm always saying it: "Find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life." And I've always found in my work with International House, both in the UK and overseas, that it's never been like work. It's been exhilarating. I loved working in reception. I'm talkative. It's a great job for me. I love the students, I love the staff, and I loved what I suppose now we have to call the ethos, but the set of principles that seemed to underpin everything that everybody did. John and Brita, our co-founders, absolutely the golden couple. There's a photograph in our conference brochure of John and Brita looking out over the roofs in Cordoba, just inspiring. But what was more inspiring, I suppose, was that everybody mattered. Even I, lowly receptionist, mattered. And I think this is, again, a very International House world quality, that everybody has value. And the teachers, oh my goodness, they kept talking about being in different countries. You know, everybody was wearing cheesecloth and scarves. Some people were even vegetarians. I'd never come across anything like it. So exotic. And as a former colleague who worked here said in his leaving speech, I won't name him, I've worked for International House for a long time. I have been excited, exasperated, annoyed, challenged, amused, but I've never been bored. And I think that many of us can share, perhaps not all the adjectives, but we've never been bored. And like Jeremy, when I took my teacher training course, fantastic, I too can become glamorous cheesecloth-wearing vegetarian person, I thought. But like Jeremy, amazing how something which happened 12 years ago can still be so impactful. And I can still remember, as everyone who did an intensive teacher training course can, I can remember specific TP occasions. And there's a distillation of experience there which is hard to explain, but impossible to forget. And I think Brita is going to be talking about teacher training later on, but one of the things, as Jeremy said in his talk, seeing Georgie doing something so remarkable, was that the people were teaching me how to teach were people I could see teaching. And this gap between the knower and the learner was reduced so dramatically. And there's a quote by a very well-known management writer called Senge, which says this: when you ask people what it's like being part of a great team, what is most striking is the meaningfulness of the experience. People talk about being part of something larger than themselves, of being connected, of being generative. It's almost, I would say, transcendent, if that didn't sound a bit psychotropic. And I think it's still true in our organisation today that we're connected with students in the classroom, and this is our key point of connection. We're connected with other teachers in the staff, and we're connected with teachers worldwide through technology, and examples such as the online element of this celebratory event yesterday. And the beauty of being part of a world organisation is that your experiences are shared and built on by sharing those experiences with others. And moving from one school to another, you learn more, you gain more. And one thing which has always resonated very strongly with me in all International House schools is that there is an atmosphere of trust and an atmosphere of almost total permission. I worked in London with a director of studies, and I've always said I could go to him and say, I would like to teach my mid-intermediate class in a bikini painted blue. Is that okay? And he would have said, of course you can, so long as you give a teacher development session on it afterwards. So that we were given permission to be generative, to try new things, to give it a go, and to be connected to a broader set of organisations and a broader set of principles, which were shared principles. And Schoen has this very good quote about, we must invent and develop institutions which are learning systems, that is to say, systems capable of bringing out their own continuing transformation. And Adrian took this idea and developed it into the idea of the learning school. And if I can quote someone who's sitting in the audience, this is very high risk. Adrian said, in a learning school, the staff set themselves up to demonstrate through their daily work the same quality of learning they hope to develop in their students. And every time I read that, I've just got to think, imagine working in a place like that. In a place like that where every staff member is trying to learn as well as we want our students to learn. And within International House, there's been a spirit and an appreciation of continuing transformation from the outset, I think. Because from the outset, we're teaching students to speak and use the language, not learning about the language and never using it. We've used very early on pair work and group work to maximise practice, to involve our students. And when we're training on initial teacher training courses, on diploma, on further training courses, the focus is always on the students, which confirms the centrality of the students for us. We don't really, I feel, need to talk very much about making the student experience central, because when you work in an International House school, the students are at the centre of everything that you do. It's hard now to imagine a time when it wasn't like that, actually. And it's hard to imagine a time when talking about language was more important than using the language. However, to quote Billy Wilder, you might as well trust your own instinct, and your mistakes might as well be your own instead of someone else's. And I think with International House, we've worked in an organisation which has always allowed us to trust our instincts, and as the true mark of a learning organisation, has viewed mistakes as opportunities for learning. In this way, the whole organisation has learned to trust its own instincts and trust its own staff. And it's given us a freedom to experiment with new approaches, new things. Otherwise, we'd never have had the English teaching theatre. We'd never have had Brita's work on pronunciation. We'd never have had new teacher training courses, the IH World Teacher Online Conference, the Distance Delta, my own management training programmes, if our organisation as a whole didn't trust us enough to allow us to develop this. And it's very true what my dad used to say, which is hindsight gives you 20/20 vision. And at IATEFL in Glasgow in 2012, when we were celebrating 50 years of IH teacher training, Jeremy said, and as we all know, Jeremy is not a person who ever exaggerates, but in speaking at our 50th teacher training celebration, Jeremy said, without John and Brita and without International House, much of IATEFL as we know it probably would not exist. Now, was that a touch hyperbolic, Jeremy? I don't know, but I think there is a lot of truth in it, because our teacher training courses have always focused on the students, their learning, how to maximise their learning, and that set the foundation of everything else that we've done. And it's unsurprising in my unbroken circle, perhaps, that the organisation which gave us what would become the CELTA developed with our colleagues from Cambridge English what is now the CELTA Online. Because the transformation, because our organisation trusts us to develop, means that we never stop thinking, never stop creating, never stop developing. None of the speakers here today started their working life thinking we would do what we're doing now, because our jobs didn't exist when we started. But because we've had our opportunities to grow, develop and learn, we are doing what we're doing now. And our great fortune was to arrive in an organisation that trusted us enough. I mean, as well, of course, as developing, alongside that, we've developed a series of criteria and inspection schemes and accreditation. And some people may say, well, all this inspection accreditation, is this stifling the creativity that we started with? And maybe that's another conference talk for another time. And one thing I think that singles us out, all of us who work for International House in all our schools, is that we're fiercely proud to work for International House. It's not just another job for us. And when people ask me the first question, which is, are you still here? My answer is actually a quote from another colleague in International House London, which is, why would I want to work for anywhere else when I already work for the best? I can't imagine why I'd want to go. And it's a quote I'm going to give you now, which is a very heartfelt favourite quote of mine from Ralph Waldo Emerson, which is, "There is no limit as to what can be achieved, provided it doesn't matter who takes the credit." And I think in International House, because we've become a learning organisation, because we've allowed people to become part of something, as Senge said, greater than themselves, then there is no limit as to what we can achieve. And every day when I look around in International House London, where I work, I see teachers preparing and teaching amazing lessons. And I see trainers preparing and delivering great training, face-to-face or, in my medium, online. And always put the students at the centre. I was reading an application for the Management Skills Certificate course the other day, and the applicant said to me, "I want to do this course because I did my CELTA with International House in Lisbon, and I did my diploma with International House through the Distance Delta, and I'm not going to go anywhere else other than International House for any further training." And it doesn't matter who their tutors were. What matters is that's what we've achieved. And my colleagues are a constant inspiration to me. And I'd like to close with a focus back on our students and back on our colleagues and back what teaching used to be like. And I found this quote from the seminal 90s band, I'm sure you will remember, EMF, who seemed to be describing what teaching used to be. And I quote, "You burden me with your questions. You'd have me tell no lies. You're always asking what it's all about, but don't listen to my replies. You say to me I don't talk enough, but when I do, I'm a fool." Now that's maybe what teaching used to be like. But I'd like to say to my colleagues in IH London and my colleagues in IH schools all over the world, what EMF should really say to all of you is, you're unbelievable. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean, have you got any questions that you want to feed?
There are no questions. Everybody is discussing the great quotes. And
Thank you.
the fact
Great.
that Maureen McGarvey has just quoted EMF is unbelievable.
Yeah, I did wonder whether people might want to actually do the guitar riff in the room at the end.
Is there anybody who's got any questions or comments that they'd like to make? Gavin?
Are you still here?
I'm still here.
Are you still here?
Yeah, I'm still here, and still no sign of a gold watch either.
Anybody else want to make a comment, a shared experience? Well,
Maureen, if you've got a moment, you should check out the chat stream. It's just a Maureen loving.
Really?
Talking about how you train them and...
Oh, it's when they say, and she trained my granddaughter. I will do, thank you very much.
well, Maureen, thank you very much for a very moving speech, a very heartfelt speech. I think we all enjoyed it in different ways. The history of IH and how long you've been with them, and the way they create the atmosphere of trust. I think what I've found is that wherever I go in International House around the world, I always know that I'm in an International House school. You always know that you're in IH. I was in Milan 4 weeks ago. It was clearly a different building, a different country, but of course it was still the IH atmosphere. We were in Cordoba last weekend, exactly the same sensation. So I think you encapsulated that very nicely, and thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
We've now got a break for, well, what might be a little bit longer than 20 minutes, but we're going to start again at 4 o'clock. I think everybody here has been sitting quietly and appreciatively long enough. So, but perhaps we can take our seats again about 5 to 4 when we can start again promptly at 4 o'clock. Thank you.